Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Common Voices. This week, we bring you a really exciting segment. It's an allyship webinar consisting of 4 of our brightest and most passionate student allies from campuses across Canada. They're doing some incredible things. And the panel was actually moderated by our very own Jean-Luc. And they shared their experiences of fostering allyship, building community, and standing up against anti-Jewish hatred on their campuses. We had the incredible Katie from the University of Ottawa, Emerson from Mount Royal University, Tiana from Western University, and Joseph from the University of British Columbia. We dove into some really intense and important conversations. We hope you enjoy speaking up against Jew hatred, allies on campus.
I'd like to thank all of you for being here today and thank our wonderful panelists. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Daniel Corin. I am the founder and executive director of Allied Voices for Israel. And I'm so pleased and honored to welcome you to our evening tonight. Allies speaking up against anti-Jewish hatred on campus. You're in for a really inspirational conversation and evening. When we started Avi 2.5 years ago, we did it because we recognized that Jewish students were alone. They were fighting against BDS motions on their own. They were fighting against anti-Semitism on their own. And whichever campus it was, and this was way before October 7th, when you saw Jewish students being discriminated, many of them stood up. Don't get me wrong, and I've worked with incredible Jewish students for years, but it was very hard to see them consistently standing on that side without any allies, especially knowing that there are so many, I think, Canadians and students who support not just, I think, the Jewish community, but common sense, Western values, common ideals that really bind us together and that really bring us together today. And I'm so proud 2.5 years later to be able to sit in a digital room here with students from across Canada who I think have shown up not just as allies for the Jewish community, but allies for a better Canada for all of us, right? That I think is something we truly all believe in, to bring back that country of tolerance, to bring back that country where we celebrate diversity, yes, but very importantly, diversity of opinion, which is so incredibly important. And what we really try to do here at Avi is engage students and engage Canadians in conversation, to provide opportunities for education and for conversation. And that's really what this evening is about tonight. You'll be hearing from students at University of Ottawa, MRU, Western, and UBC. The evening will be moderated by our very own Jean-Luc Mudingayi. And really the focus, the purpose of tonight is to hear from those students who have been on the front lines against anti-Semitism, despite the fact that they aren't Jewish, because again, I believe they believe in a better Canada for all of us. And that's why we stand up against hatred. We say quite often here at Avi that allyship is a two-way street. And for the incredible individuals who are standing with our community, it's very important for us to stand with their communities as well. And I hope there'll be more opportunities to learn about that this evening. I'd like to now introduce our moderator, our Alberta campus advisor, and our incredible advocacy associate, Jean-Luc, who will be leading the conversation with our 4 student panelists. Jean-Luc, take it away.
Thanks so much, Daniel. I really appreciate it. As Daniel said, thank you everyone for coming tonight. We all have busy schedules. It's a very busy time, and yet you took the time to take some time in your busy evenings and to share some time with us. So very grateful for that. As Daniel said, these student leaders are incredible. They're great. Myself and Nadali have had the opportunity to spend time with them respectively in both Israel and in Italy, and to see them grow throughout those 10 days as student leaders, engaging with one another in conversation and dialogue, and to see each of their own respective initiatives on their respective campuses has been great. And I'm just fortunate to be your moderator tonight. So we'll start off, first of all, with good old questions for myself, engaging and talking to our students. And shortly after that, hopefully we'll have some time for some Q&A, and that'll essentially be our programming for this evening. So I guess we'll start off with some nice introductions, and we'll go one by one. We'll begin with Tiana.
Yes, thank you so much, Jean-Luc. My name is Tiana Lodewijk. Go to the University of Western Ontario, and was a Common Ground ambassador during the Italy trip just this past summer. I'm also a Friends of Israel Gospel Ministry representative, which is a Christian organization that supports Israel. And I'm just so excited to be here tonight and to get to share a little bit and hear from everyone today. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tiana. Next, we have Emerson.
Thank you, Jean-Luc. Hello, everyone. My name is Emerson Picklick. I go to Mount Royal University. I'm studying biology at the moment. And I was on the Common Ground 2025 trip to Italy, also with Tiana and Jacob and Joseph, and it was wonderful. And I think it was a really good time just to reflect on my own personal values and get to meet other people. And yeah, I'm also really excited for tonight, share some ideas and talk some interesting things.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Emerson. Next up, we have Joseph.
Yeah, so thank you, Daniel and Jean-Luc there for the wonderful introductions. I really appreciate it. So hello, everyone. My name is Joseph White, and I'm a student at the University of British Columbia. I, too, like Tiana and Emerson, had the privilege of attending the Common Ground trip this past summer in Italy. And like them as well, I'm looking forward to this panel.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joseph. And last but not least, we have Katie.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Katie Impiculo. I'm in my first year of law school at the University of Ottawa, and I had the privilege of going to Israel this past winter, where I spent 10 amazing days in both Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. And this, of course, wouldn't have been possible with Allied Voices for Israel, which I'm so grateful for. And I look forward to sharing my experiences later on in the panel. So thank you, everyone, for attending.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Katie. Just amazing. And as Daniel said, we live in an increasingly polarized society where, the diversity of opinions don't really quite exist anymore. And standing up for, Israel nowadays is a little bit taboo. So I guess my first question to start the evening is, what inspired you guys personally to become an ally for Israel and the Jewish community? Was it something that your family instilled, or was it something that you took upon yourself? And I guess since we ended with you, Katie, we'll start with you first.
Well, thanks for the question. So before October 7th, I honestly wasn't very involved in Israel advocacy at all. And I didn't know much about the conflict and even much Jewish people, or maybe I did, and that aspect of their identity wasn't aware to me. But that all completely changed on October 7th, where I woke up that morning to the horrific news of the series of terrorist attacks in the south of Israel. And like many people my age, I instantly turned to social media, where I opened Twitter and saw images and videos that no one should ever have to see. But what disturbed me the most that morning wasn't just the attacks themselves, but it was the reaction I saw from people around me. And so as I was driving back from my grandparents' house with my family, I saw protesters waving Palestinian flags in the streets and quite obviously appearing to celebrate what was the largest massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. And even some people I once had considered friends were posting in support of these horrific acts. So that really was the turning point for me. And from that moment on, I realized I wasn't going to stay silent in the face of such hate. That is not at all who I am. I've always valued life and empathy and standing up for what's right. And I knew I couldn't ignore what was happening. And in terms of whether it was my family or myself, as a family, we weren't, again, particularly informed about the Israel-Iranian proxy conflict before October 7th, but I was raised with pretty strong values. My parents had always taught me to stand up against hate and defend what's good, even if you stand alone or if you stand with a few. And my father especially shaped that belief. He was a refugee from Uganda who grew up surrounded by division, tribalism, and violence. And from a young age, where he escaped civil war under Idi Amin, he witnessed firsthand what happens when people dehumanize one another. And he taught me the importance of never being indifferent to that kind of hate. And his family brought him to Canada to have a better life. So I would say it's both. My family kind of gave me that foundation, but my own experiences after October 7th really solidified my belief and pushed me into action.
Wow, that's amazing. Thanks so much, Katie. Joseph, how about yourself? How did your journey with allyship begin?
For sure. Yeah. Thank you, Jean-Luc. So yeah, what inspired me to be an ally? Well, I myself am not Jewish. I have family who lives in and around Tel Aviv. So Israel has always been a topic of discussion around supper, and particularly every second winter holiday when my family comes and visits. So I guess you could say I've always been somewhat invested and supportive of Israel in that regard. However, what really spurred me to pursue the Avi ambassadorship and in some ways declare myself a formal ally of Israel was, as Katie has mentioned, the October 7th, 2023 attacks. Yeah, hearing my aunt cry over the phone and watching a sweeping wave of anti-Semitism engulf my campus. This time I knew I couldn't just stand by. I couldn't just watch. I knew that I had to take a formal stand. And Avi and the Common Ground Ambassadorship offered me a platform then to voice my concerns.
Well, thanks so much, Joseph. Yeah, the experiences on camps after October 7th was definitely an alarming and surprising one. And not much hope, but when you see students stand up, it's a ray of hope, light in darkness. That's very encouraging. Next up, we have Tiana, your journey with allyship.
Yeah, thank you, Jean-Luc. So for me, I grew up thoroughly studying the Bible and having a solid understanding of God's promises to Israel and the Jewish people throughout Scripture. My grandparents always supported Israel, which really instilled that in me. Even way back, as far as my great-grandpa in Holland, before Israel was anything more than a dream, and when the Jewish people were still very much in the diaspora and spread around the world, he believed what the Bible says about Israel. And he always said that the Jewish people would someday come back to the land of Israel from the four corners of the world, as God said in Isaiah chapter 11. So I really grew up with that background and understanding from a young age. But it became personal for me when I went to Israel when I was 14. And I got to see and experience Israel and the land and the people there. And that really deepened my faith. Both the past, seeing where the Bible happened, really growing my understanding of God's word, but also in the present, seeing what was happening there today, really just deepened my faith. And so, caused this instant personal love for the land and the people as well. So from there, I kept going back to Israel. And for me, I love the Jewish people, and I feel that I owe much to them. As a Christian, it was through the Jewish people that I have my Messiah, Jesus Christ. And it was through the Jewish people that the Bible was written. And so I also love God, and I want to love what God loves. And the Bible says that God loves Israel and that he has a plan for the Jewish people. And so that really matters to me as well. So I think ultimately for me, I'm an ally because I love the Jewish people. I feel that I've been so spiritually blessed by them. I also love God and I believe in his promises. And so I want to take a stand there and take a stand for what is right and speak up as an ally for Israel.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tiana. And last, we've got Emerson.
Yeah, thank you. I think for myself, what really, really inspired me to, become involved with Allied Voices for Israel, but not only involved, but just interested in where Israel stands in geopolitical context and in my own life and how I view Israel. I think it was just really important to reflect on my own personal values. And I think it's also important as a global citizen to be aware of global events and what's going on, and to also act on them as well. And I think, a few of the other moderators here have said similar things where, action is really, really important. So Allied Voices for Israel, for me, has provided a wonderful, wonderful way to listen to different perspectives that I don't have and go, I never thought about it like that before. And, listen to the lived experiences of different people around me, and including in the Jewish community as well. So, it's a gift that keeps on giving, really, and I'm really, really thankful to be a part of it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Emerson. And just for everyone listening, I think it's so compelling to see the diversity of answers there, seeing where the different roots stem, whether it's, faith-based and rooted in your belief in Christianity, or if it's a global citizen responsibility and as an ambassador of the world, knowing to stand up for your fellow human being if that's what pushes you, and seeing how both elements kind of work towards shaping, I guess, at the end of the day, a personal decision they felt led to make at the end. And it's really beautiful to see. And Emerson, I'm very curious to know, do you have a particular example that really highlighted why it was important to be a non-Jewish ally to the Jewish community?
For sure. I think an example I'll give for you, Jean-Luc. So earlier this year in September, I live in Calgary, Alberta, and we had a walk for Israel at the Calgary Jewish Community Center. And it was a walk, in solidarity and to stand with Israel. And what I found really, really interesting, there was great representation from both, people of the Jewish faith and also, people who aren't Jewish themselves, like myself. And I think it's really, really important to recognize that, it's not just Jewish people standing up for Israel. There's a broader support for Israel. And, I'm a part of that and I'm proud to be a part of that. And there's other people who are proud to be part of that and willing to show up to an event such as that to show their support. So I think it's really important to show up to events like that, even if it's not the biggest thing in the world. It really, really means a lot, just how important it is to speak up as a non-Jewish ally to show that, hey, you're not alone. And it was mentioned before, sometimes it can kind of be a little bit polarizing, or you can kind of feel left out or alone if you're saying, hey, actually, I do stand with Israel, but you're not alone. So that's why I think it's really important to have those sorts of things to show that there are people in your corner.
Yeah, and just for folks that aren't aware, I was at that walk for Israel as well in Calgary, and it was so amusing to see Emerson was just so comfortable, and he was at home, and we had the flags out. We were just celebrating, for a walk for Israel. And I looked over at the table, and there was always a stream of people coming through because they were just so ready to engage with him. But you mentioned something very interesting, that notion of, standing alone and polarization on campus. And, some campuses are a bit more difficult than others. I mean, we had the encampments towards the end of 2024. UBC in particular was one of the campuses that had their encampments last quite a bit longer than maybe a U of C that had an encampment last less than 24 hours. So, Joseph, I guess my question for you is, how would you describe the atmosphere of UBC today when it comes to conversations about Israel and anti-Semitism?
Yeah, for sure, Jean-Luc. I'd just like to preface, first of all, I think we are moving in the right direction. And I don't have a specific story off the top of my head for something at this present moment. And I think that's something to be grateful for. But I do have a story from a year prior. So I vividly remember one day in September 2024, so last year, standing outside the campus library, watching students parade through, break doors, and ultimately face no apparent consequences for their actions. I was shocked, baffled, and I realized that if I was feeling unsafe and vulnerable, being denied access to a space where I spend so much of my time, probably should spend a little bit more time there. But how must Jewish students be feeling, right? Definitely no more secure than I felt at that moment. And for me, campus shouldn't be a place where people have to worry about their safety. It shouldn't be a place of destruction, intimidation, or, like you said, Jean-Luc, encampments. Campus is a place of work, learning, and, like Daniel mentioned, dialogue, and most importantly, of community. It was from this moment that I realized how important it is to speak up as a non-Jewish ally, not to center myself personally, but to stand with others, help bridge divides, foster understanding, and contribute to a space where everyone feels seen, supported, and ultimately safe.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joseph. And I can personally attest to Joseph being someone that holds space very well in conversation, in particular conversations we had in Italy. One thing that was very much of note when we were on that trip there was students were always so ready to hold space for another, whether they had, varying disagreements politically, if you wanted to say that. They were always so ready to listen, and Joseph was a great example for that. So thanks, Joseph. But I'm also curious to know the situation a bit farther east then. The nation's capital, Ottawa, is a place of interest. And Katie, I'm pretty curious to know, what is the current atmosphere like at the University of Ottawa today?
Well, unfortunately, I'd say I'm most grateful in a way that anti-Semitism on my campus at Ottawa isn't as severe as what I've seen at other universities, like those in Montreal or Toronto, and I think I speak for everyone here when I say what happened recently at TMU with the doors being smashed in was appalling. I mean, there's just no words for it. But even with that said, we still have some very real and concerning issues when it comes to discrimination and hate at UOttawa. And one of the things that had shocked me the most after becoming more involved in Israel advocacy on campus was realizing just how much security measures needed to be taken to keep Jewish students safe. And it's honestly devastating when groups like Hillel or Chabad or Ally Voices for Israel host an event. They often can't even share the location publicly. So the details have to be sent out last minute, basically in secret, because of such safety concerns. And actually, at one event I had attended, an anti-Semitic campus club that goes by the name INSAF, which has posted on numerous occasions in support of October 7th, with no punishment at all, had posted the location, rather the presumed location of an event that I was going to attend. And someone in the comment section had written, "Go get him," referring to the guest speaker. That's harassment, that's intimidation. And the fact that this kind of behavior is being tolerated by university administrators, people who are in positions of leadership, is deeply concerning. But unfortunately, this type of bullying behavior is not only perpetuated by students, but also by staff of the university. And I have witnessed this firsthand, where on March 5th, 2025 of this year, I was helping host a hostage table, like a hostage awareness table with a friend. And before we could even finish setting up, two paid members of the student union had accused us of supporting genocide and the oppression of Palestinians for nearly 20 minutes, with the goal of trying to get our table shut down or our posters removed. And so it's experiences like that leave you feeling that you don't quite belong, or that you somehow have to hide your values. And I think that's incredibly sad, especially in a university environment, which is supposed to be a place for open dialogue and intellectual exchange. And no one should ever have to hide who they are or what they believe in. As long as it's reasonable, I think we can all agree. But campuses should be places where you can disagree respectfully and have real conversations and learn from one another, because if not there, where else? So, I mean, that's what a healthy society should look like. What's been happening isn't healthy, and it's not helpful for anyone, for the students, or even for society at large, when this type of behavior goes unchecked. So that's been my experience at UOttawa. Obviously, it hasn't been overly positive, but I do hope things change.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Katie. And I think something that you and Joseph both, I guess, pretty much brought light to in your answers is there's varying cases on a campus per campus basis, and unfortunately, for the most part, it seems like administrations and administrators feel a little less inclined to take strong action. And what we're hearing is that we need stronger action enforced for our students to feel safe. I mean, on one campus, an encampment is taken down on the first day, and the other, it's there for varying degrees and periods of time. So I think it's of the utmost responsibility to make sure your students are secure and safe to do what they first and foremost seek to do on campus, and that is get a degree, if that degree is what they're looking for. But you did highlight something important, and the power of standing together and with friendship. And most recently, Tiana had just come over to Calgary, and she was here for a unity social between both Christian and Jewish groups here in Calgary. And then she was also over at UBC as well, to have that as well. And I'm curious to know, what are effective ways that you've found to build coalitions with other student groups or communities to promote understandings and dialogue?
100%. Thank you, Jean-Luc. I think the first thing is just engaging in conversations. That is just so essential. Often I find that there's, a great big divide between the Jewish community on campus and many other communities. And often I see that in the Christian community as well. And that's very unfortunate. And so we got to do a few events this fall, which was so much fun at the University of Calgary, as Jean-Luc said, and also at UBC, just kind of trying to bridge that gap and bring Christian students out and Jewish students out, and just to have dialogue, just to engage in conversation. So we had food. At the one event, it was at a bowling alley, so we got to have some, fun competition as well. And we also had discussion cards where we were able to engage in discussion questions like, what does Zionism mean to you? And hear that from a Christian perspective and a Jewish perspective. Hear more about how we as Christians can support the Jewish students in a meaningful way, and how we can even be involved and what that looks like. So those events were super fun, just to kind of open up that door for dialogue. I know on my own campus as well, I'm hoping to do a few more events like that in the next coming semester. And I think ultimately for me, in terms of building bridges with these other communities, is just to, bring the experiences that I have in the Jewish community into all the other communities where I have friends. And they ask me, what am I involved with on campus? And I get to share, like, oh, I go to Hillel when I can, or I like to be involved in the Jewish community a little bit as well. And then they'll have questions about that, and you can really just kind of open the door for conversation and break down those barriers of separation that I find so often on these campuses, which is really unfortunate, especially between the Christian and Jewish community. There's so many shared values. And so it's really nice to have conversations, good-hearted discussions over those shared values, over different values, and just really kind of open that road for dialogue. And I think by doing that, you find more allies that way. There's stronger bridges built, and there's more opportunity for collaboration and for fighting anti-Semitism in a meaningful way. So that's what I would, share about that. Thanks for the question, Jean-Luc.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tiana. I was fortunate to be there as well. And it was really nice to see the contrast where there was room and space for, deep and thorough discussion and conversation. I personally myself tend to be quite a bit more competitive. So I spent a lot of my time over at the bowling alley. If there's one thing people competition is universal, and it was great to kind of see some of the other competitors compete then as well. Joseph, I'm also very curious to know, with your experience, what have been effective ways to build coalitions with other student groups, and ways in which you have found understanding and built dialogue with others as well?
For sure, Jean-Luc. Too bad I missed the bowling alley. It sounds like a hoot. But I did get to attend Tiana's social at UBC, and it was great. So thank you, Tiana, for hosting and organizing that. So for me, building coalitions boils down to 3 words: simply showing up. I'll keep it real with you all here today. As Tiana knows, I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to have to sit here staring into a screen, speaking to who knows who about me and my own experiences. I don't really even like talking about myself that much regardless. But after a wee bit of introspection and some Tiana convincing, I'll admit, I realized that for me, being an ally is about being present. It's about showing up, attending events, joining conversations, difficult ones at that, and creating spaces where people, again, feel seen, heard, and supported. Whether that space is Hillel or the campus pub, I've learned that by sharing your own story and by listening to others, we can work to build coalitions with other student groups and communities on campus. For me, stories have the power to connect, and they don't do anything just by sitting idle. So by simply showing up and sharing whatever it is we have to offer, we can remind ourselves and others that no one has to face any challenge alone.
Thanks so much, Joseph. And I think you hit a very important point with the notion of just showing up and being present. One thing that I had to learn over the years personally myself was leadership isn't just in taking a role or a position and leading a team, but it can be as simple as just showing up every single day for the reps, whether, it's like playing sports back in the day, being there at practice on time, being there, taking every single dribble and rep that you're supposed to take. That it's the exact same thing here as well, where it's like, if your friends or people in your community know that you're there for them, it gives them maybe the strength that they need to take an extra step or move forward with whatever they need to do. So being present is a huge portion. And I guess what's really nice is, with Common Ground and the Common Ground program, unfortunately, it's been during a time of war. So some of our trips have taken place in Israel, and the other 2 took place in Italy. But they made for interesting trips with the groups that we had, and they all had interesting things that we as staff were able to draw from them, and students were able to draw from as well. So I guess my next question is for Emerson, as an ambassador who just came from Italy here in 2025. What were certain moments that you had on the trip that were memorable and, again, kind of narrow down and hone down on the point that allyship is important?
That's a great question. I think one we talked about before, Jean-Luc, was, and I think you did this one as well, was the Jewish indigeneity to the land of Israel. And that workshop was probably like one of the biggest highlights from that trip, because I think in that workshop, it was just such an environment that, it encouraged thoughtful and meaningful discussion, even over things we might have disagreed on as well. And I think what was great about it is that, the people there in that workshop, though, they were interested in, over Israel and Jewish indigeneity to Israel, but there were different takes as well. And it was super interesting to hear those different takes. But I think ultimately come to the conclusion that there are different ways to look at Jewish indigeneity to Israel. But what I think we can really rally around behind as supporters of Israel is that we do believe in the core fundamental idea that there is a Jewish indigeneity to Israel. And so, yeah, just hearing ideas and perspectives that I never heard before and having the ability to go, I never thought about it like that before. And I think that allyship is really, really important in realizing that, yeah, there is a Jewish indigeneity to Israel, and there are different ways we can look at it, but we can all come together in that common belief.
Thanks so much, Emerson. I think you're hitting a very important point. I mean, if we're looking at modern forms of, if we could say anti-Jewish hatred today, one of the biggest tenets that are used today is the whole notion of anti-Zionism and delegitimizing, Israel and the Jewish indigeneity to the land of Israel. Having workshops like that and having, students stand up and recognizing that Israel is a state, it does exist, and it will never not exist is very, very important. And fortunately, some of our students, featuring Katie here as well, we were able to go to Israel and see some interesting sites, go to the Knesset, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also engage with some of the locals, having some good old sabich or some shukshuka, really taking the land in for what it was. And Kate, I'm curious to know, what were certain moments on the Common Ground program in Israel when we went at the end of 2024 that really stuck out to you?
Well, it's really hard to choose just the one, but again, I'm just so grateful to Allied Voices for Israel for giving me the opportunity to travel to Israel. And, as a non-Jewish ally and a Christian, I went there wanting to better understand the reality on the ground. And, before going, as you said, like the attempts to illegitimize Israel, and, you often hear, oh, Israel's an oppressive, apartheid, supremacist state. But being there and meeting the people of Israel completely dismantle all those lies. And I met Israelis from all walks of life, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, and Bedouins. And I realized how diverse and complex society actually is. And these weren't the stereotypes that you see online. These were people who just want to live, work, and raise their families in peace. And one of the most impactful moments for me was visiting a mosque in Israel. And that was actually the first and only mosque I had ever been to, which is funny to tell my friends that was in Israel. But I just remember sitting there surrounded by my Jewish and Christian friends and with the Muslim worshipers, and we're just all sipping tea and chatting on a late night. And as simple as that was, that moment really stayed with me, because it showed me that allyship is about recognizing our shared humanity and having the courage to defend it. And another interesting individual I met was a Lebanese Christian Israeli, Jonathan Al-Khoury, who essentially got expelled out of southern Lebanon after Hezbollah took it over. And he shared how important it was to him that people abroad understand that Israel isn't a monolith and that many people call it home with equal rights. So hearing this those false narratives go unchallenged, and what happens is people's stories and lives get erased. So I can confidently say that my 10 days in Israel was nothing short of positive and peaceful and spiritually transformative. And ultimately, the world should really look to Israel as an example of what allyship is and what respect should look like. And for me, that comes with the duty of, now that I've been, to use my voice to speak the truth, even when it's unpopular, because it's the right thing to do. And at the end of the day, it's a real shame that people don't see the beauty of Israel for what it is, because there's a lot to be learned and appreciated from it.
Well, thanks so much, Katie. And just thinking about the trip right now, that session with Jonathan Alcluri was really, really amazing. And I personally remember you asking very critical, thorough, and in-depth questions. So one thing that my fellow staff and I can talk to is on the trip, we'd always tell the students, to have good questions whenever we had speakers, to challenge them and such. And we get the same feedback every single time where the speakers were like, they had some very thorough, complex questions. We think it was great. And I think you get the most of what you're looking for from a conversation when you're genuinely engaging and trying to come out of the session with something positive. So again, thank you for that. I guess my next question is, as Daniel mentioned at the start, might as well end as we began. One of the fundamental principles of allyship is the notion of it being a two-way street. I guess my question to every single one of you is, do you feel like you received support from the Jewish community as well? And I guess for this one, we're going to start with Joseph.
For sure, Jean-Luc. Thank you. You're there. Yes, absolutely. Through my involvement with Avi, I've not only learned a tremendous amount, not being from a Jewish household myself, but I've received lots of encouragement and presented with countless opportunities, such as this here today, to make a truly meaningful difference. And at the same time, the community has welcomed me and shared their own experiences and trusted me to stand alongside them. And that support has shown me that allyship is indeed a two-way street where listening, learning, and acting together ultimately strengthens everyone involved. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Joseph. Tiana?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So for me, I would say I think of myself more as a friend than an ally, in the sense that, even if I didn't feel appreciation for my support, it wouldn't change anything about what I'm doing. But that being said, I definitely do feel support and appreciation from the Jewish community, and that's been so encouraging. I think for me, when I get invited in opportunities to be involved, that makes me really excited, and that is definitely a huge support. I mean, even the trip with Ally Voice for Israel that we got to go on as a non-Jewish ally, to be able to be part of that, and to be able to benefit and glean from those experiences was really impactful, and was really supportive. And it also prepared me and educated me better to then come back to my campus and be a more effective ally. And so opportunities like that, I'm really, really, really appreciate. And also, I think one area where I also feel support is when my support of the Jewish community brings encouragement to them. That really is encouraging to me, and it makes me want to be more involved and look for more ways to support. Because often, you want to be involved if you're an ally, but sometimes you don't know what to do. Sometimes if you're on campus and you don't really know very many Jewish students, or you don't really know if you should come out to certain events, or just how to get involved at all, it can be a little overwhelming. And so when there's opportunities, and when that involvement brings encouragement, it's really mutually supportive. And I would also say, I've learned a lot from the Jewish community. Even a lot of the events that I've gone to for, Sukkot or Shavuot or whatever the feasts are, I've really enjoyed those. And those have taught me things, taught me a depth of Jewish culture. I've also learned, more context around biblical knowledge. And so there's just a lot of incredible encounters that I've had that have encouraged me and made me feel supportive, and hopefully was encouraging to both communities.
Thanks so much, Tiana. Emerson?
For sure, yeah. I think before I even answer, I think it's important to realize that, we as people, we're not capable of, solving all the world's problems by ourselves. But I think ultimately, allyship being a two-way street as well, it's not just you, there's also other people. And that's actually a really, really good thing, because again, like I mentioned before, this shows that you're not alone in standing for what you believe in, but also there's other people who are willing to stand by you and, help build momentum towards what you want to achieve. So have I received support or, in a two-way street towards allyship? Absolutely. And I think Allied Voices for Israel has done a wonderful job of that. And I think some examples as well, support can come in different ways. So there can be more direct support as in, hey, I'm going to help you set up this event and I'm going to make sure, or I'll give you the resource you need to succeed in this event you want to do, be it a tabling at campus or another social or whatever. But also there can be indirect forms of support as well, which I'm very thankful the Avi staff have been able to give to me. I'm really appreciative of it. That could just be checking in. It's like, hey man, how you doing? Or also ensuring that we're safe as well. Sometimes things can get a little bit uncomfortable and, ensuring that safety is prioritized, but also that we are able to do what we want to do as well on campus or wherever we are. That's really important. So those opportunities to say that I stand with Israel, but also, put words into actions as well. So yes, I've received support and I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Emerson. And last but not least, once again, Katie.
Well, sort of as my colleague said, being an ally has been such a positive experience for me. And I've met some of the most kind, genuine, and resilient people through the Jewish community and in Israel. And it's really opened my eyes in so many ways. And yeah, I totally agree that allyship really only works when it goes both ways. And of course, I try to show up and speak out, but it also means a lot when the community welcomes you in, so that you're not just standing beside them, but with them. And that really does make a key difference. And something I've really appreciated is when Jewish friends have invited me to things like Shabbat dinners or community events, since it gives me a chance to experience Jewish life and culture beyond advocacy and activism. And it's especially meaningful at a time when, even as an ally, it can feel quite isolating at times for standing up for what I believe in when I have lost friends or have distanced myself from people and so forth. So I think when allies are included in that way, it strengthens everything, because we get to stand for people we personally know and we personally care about. And I think that's what makes allyship real. So when it's not only about showing support in hard times, but also be welcome to celebrate the good ones together. And as an advocate, it really does help.
Thank you so much, Katie. And yeah, that's a great way to wrap up the last question there. Just to close up on what they were saying in regards to allyship being a two-way street. And one thing I can even speak to is the whole notion of, the community just coming together and, supporting yourself on maybe a more personal, emotional level. Like, you can go have an intense tabling session, just once again, defending the right for Israel to exist. And then, just kind of decompress, decide to go out with some friends and maybe karaoke after, because, after some hard, long conversations, you felt like you have each other as a support or, a support system or friends that you can really count on in those regards. But yeah, allyship truly is a two-way street. And yeah, that's really all for the question period. So thank you so much to Emerson, Tiana, Joseph, and Katie. If this would probably be naturally in person, if this was in person, where you'd give them a round of applause. Since I have my mic on, I'm giving them a round of applause right now. Thank you so much for your contribution. And I guess we're going into our short question and answer period, where I guess you as the viewers have the opportunity to ask some questions. But before we do that, this is where I step out, and I'd like to introduce our amazing Director of Campus Affairs, Dalish Najman, who's amazing. I've never seen anyone who works as hard as her, and I'm sure you'll love her just as much as we love her at Avi. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean-Luc, for that really incredible introduction. And I really just want to say incredible job to all of our students here today. Katie, Emerson, Joseph, and Tiana, you are truly all such an inspiration and are making such a meaningful impact on university campuses across Canada and within your communities. And it's truly such a privilege to know each and every one of you, truly. And it's been a privilege to work with you all and get to know you better on our Common Ground ambassadorships. So truly, I just feel so lucky to know you all. And I really see you all going so far in life. And really, the fact that you feel comfortable to be an outspoken ally for Israel and the Jewish community means so much. And it's not something that's taken lightly. Also, very quickly, I would like to mention that we are currently having our Avi matching fundraiser where all donations are 4 times matched. So for anyone who's interested in supporting our cause and engaging more of our allies, we definitely love to have your support. So for anyone who's able to donate, every small donation counts. Everything is being 4 times matched by some of our incredible donors. And yeah, so I do see that there's some Q&A questions right now. For anyone who has questions for our incredible students here today, please feel free to use the Q&A box as we're going to start to answer some of these questions. So the first one I see here is, what do you do on campus when you're scared to tell people you're Jewish because now you're going to public school or like a public university versus going to a private Jewish school? So that's the first question, is if there's someone in specific who would like to answer this, or I'm happy to call upon someone. But yeah, if anyone has any advice for someone who is scared to tell people they're Jewish because now they're no longer going to private Jewish school and they're on university campuses.
Yeah, I could answer. Well, first of all, Simone, I'm really sorry to hear that. And I want to acknowledge, how heavy that is. And as I said earlier, no one should have to hide a really important part of who they are to feel safe. And as a non-Jew, there's no words to describe how sorry I feel about what's been happening and how little people, especially those in leadership positions, are doing nothing about it. And I would say that in terms of, I'm not a Jewish person, so my answer here is quite limited, but, you do want to be safe. So know who's your friend and who's not. That's something that I've personally had to know is, there are some people you're going to have to let go. Like after October 7th, there was a bunch of people that were posting in support of October 7th. And at the end of the day, those aren't people who I want to be friends with. So another thing that has helped me, although I'm not Jewish, was going to Hillel, where there's community events where you don't have to hide that aspect of who you are. So you do have that sense of belonging, because otherwise it can feel pretty hard if you don't have that outlet. So reach out to the Jewish organizations around you, whether that's Hillel or Chabad, or, become part of Allied Voices for Israel. There's so many resources that I've utilized to help me get more comfortable in my advocacy work. And I'm sure that they could help you with the feelings that you're having, and your concerns are very real, and I'm so sorry to hear about that. But thank you for sharing. And it takes a lot of vulnerability to say that out loud. And your honesty is really just a reminder of why we need to keep showing up as allies and speaking up and pushing back against hate. So thank you for that reminder.
Katie, that was a beautiful answer, and thank you so much. I hope that Simone is able to find comfort in that answer. I think one question I would personally like for each of you to answer is something that I know that we kind of touched on earlier, but how do you see, all of you are based across Canada, and so I'm sure that your answers will be diverse in this, but where do you see the progression of your campus going in the next 5 years in terms of Israel advocacy and allyship and coalition building, and where do you forecast either like the region or your campus specifically going within the next 5 years, and how do you personally feel, and what are you seeing based on your university? I would love to hear from Joseph first, who's from BC, goes to UBC, so I'll let him go first.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Adalia. I know you're in Vancouver as well, so this is important stuff. But I think for me, we're heading in the right direction. I haven't really heard or seen anything like the encampments from years past, or individuals moving throughout libraries. And talking with peers and looking out at campus myself, I do feel like we're working towards and actively moving towards a better place. Of course, there's still plenty of work to do, but there is hope.
Thank you, Joseph. And okay, we'll go now to Tiana, who's based in Ontario.
Thanks, Adalia. Yeah, I would say it might not sound super optimistic, but I would say, I think there will be, continue to be certain areas where there's anti-Semitism, unfortunately. I've found campuses becoming more polarized, unfortunately. Spaces for dialogue and conversation, I feel like often there's a sense of, wanting to talk and not necessarily hear the other side as well. And I think that's very unfortunate. So yeah, I won't be super positive at where I see it going, but I also see very intense pockets of hope as well. I see more opportunities for collaboration. I see, sometimes when it is very dark and when it is difficult because of the anti-Semitism, there are people that then stand up, and that's, even more of a statement. And there's more opportunities for collaboration in that way. So, I'm definitely optimistic. Hopefully we'll continue to see some growth in this area. I also hope to see more involvement from campus administration. I think that's one of the main points, because I think if there's anti-Semitism on the campus among the students, it is especially important that the administration and the student councils are aware of that, and then they're going to make decisions that aren't just following the trend of the campus. And so I think that that's going to be very important moving forward in terms of the actual decisions that are made up top on the campuses that then allow, tabling and those spaces for dialogue. Those have to remain allowed on campus in order to see an effective way forward. So, yeah.
Thank you, Tiana. I really appreciate your vulnerability and honesty in answering that question. Okay, so we'll go back out west now with Emerson.
Sure, thanks, Adalia. I'll start by saying this. I don't think it's hopeless. Sorry, my chair's creaking right now. I don't think it's hopeless, but it's going to require a lot of hard work. And it's going to feel like an uphill battle at times as well. I'm sure it already does now, and it's going to continue to feel like an uphill battle. But I do think there are pockets of hope. And I think there are certainly some people who already have their minds made up, be it for or against Israel. But I certainly do believe that there are people somewhere in the middle who haven't made up their mind and are sitting on the fence and go, actually, I've never really thought about that before. And I think that's why it's so important for people like us, Dahlia, to get involved with what we're doing, say, tonight and more, because, it's really important to say, hey, actually, here's a side of the story that maybe you don't hear on social media or on the news. And it's really important to give that balanced perspective like that so people can make a more informed decision. So it's an uphill battle, but I think there are pockets of hope that are moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Emerson. I definitely hear where you're coming from on that. And now we'll go to Ottawa with Katie.
Well, I really hope that with chaos comes order, and I think we're still in that period of chaos and turmoil, but I do really think that there is a silent majority in Canada who are quite disgusted by what they're seeing with buildings being vandalized and people getting hurt. And, unfortunately for a lot of people my age, they're currently treating the topic of Israel and Palestine as the latest trend, which is incredibly sad, especially given that there's real people involved and it's not, some kind of sports game. But these people are not genuine, and they will move on to the next topic because they aren't serious and thoughtful individuals. And hopefully they will realize with age that, the harm that they cause to a very vulnerable community. But that's just my opinion. And I think regardless of what we all think about the future of Canada, whether positive or negative, we have to stay hopeful, because if we're not hopeful, we become passive, because then we think there's nothing worth fighting for. And then it will only get worse. So stay hopeful, because we still do have a lot fighting for, for both the safety of Jews and ultimately the future of Canada for our children and their children and for our future generations. So, that would be my advice, is no matter what, we have to keep our hope, and we have to still try to move forward and help make the situation better.
Thank you so much, Katie. I definitely agree with you that we need to be hopeful and strong, and I definitely agree with you on that. With that, we are going to be concluding our webinar. I want to thank everybody who came in attendance today.